The sound of Katherine sobbing carried across the water like a wounded animal's cry. And Zachary knew, before he even saw her, that whoever was making that sound had been broken by something terrible. It was late afternoon in June of 1878, and the Rio Grande ran swift and muddy near Johnson City, Texas, swollen from recent rains upstream. Zachary Morrison had been tracking a lost mare for the better part of 3 hours when he heard the weeping. His first instinct was to keep riding, to mind his own business like any sensible man in these parts would do. But something in that sound pulled at him, reminding him of his younger sister's cries the day their mother had died of fever. He dismounted from his bay gelding and walked carefully through the cottonwood trees that lined the riverbank, his boots making soft sounds on the muddy ground. When he saw her, his breath caught in his throat. She was sitting on a flat rock near the water's edge, her dark hair hanging loose and wild around her shoulders, her dress torn at the sleeve and stained with dust and what might have been blood. She was young, maybe 20 or 21, with a face that would have been beautiful if it was not currently twisted in anguish. "Madam," Zachary called out softly, not wanting to startle her, "are you hurt?" Katherine looked up with red-rimmed eyes, and for a moment she seemed too shocked to speak. She stared at him as if trying to decide whether he was real or some kind of apparition. When she finally found her voice, it came out hoarse and broken. "Please," she whispered, "please just leave me alone." Zachary stayed where he was, keeping his hands visible and his voice gentle. He was 24 years old and had been working cattle and horses since he was tall enough to reach a stirrup. He had seen plenty of suffering in his life, both human and animal, and he recognized the look in this woman's eyes. It was the look of someone who had lost everything. "I cannot do that, madam," he said quietly. "Not in good conscience. You are hurt, and it will be dark soon. Whatever happened to you, sitting out here alone is not going to make it better." "Nothing will make it better," Katherine said, her voice rising with a hysterical edge. "My father is dead. My brother is dead. Our ranch was burned to the ground by men who said we owed them money. I have nothing left. Nothing." The words came out in a rush, as if a dam had broken inside her. She covered her face with her hands and began to sob again, her whole body shaking. Zachary felt his chest tighten with sympathy and anger. He knew the kind of men she was talking about. There were plenty of vultures in Texas who preyed on small ranchers, either working for the big cattle barons or just operating on their own greed. He moved closer slowly and knelt down a few feet away from her. "What is your name?" he asked. She looked up at him through her fingers. "Katherine." "Katherine Edwards. Katherine," he repeated, letting the name settle between them. "My name is Zachary Morrison. I work for the Double M Ranch about 15 miles north of here. I am going to help you if you will let me." "Why?" The question came out sharp and suspicious. "Why would you help me?" "You do not even know me." "Because it is the right thing to do," Zachary said simply. "And because I can see that you need help, and I have the means to give it." Katherine stared at him for a long moment, searching his face as if looking for signs of deception. What she saw there must have reassured her somehow, because her expression softened slightly. She was still crying, but the violent sobs had subsided into quieter tears. "I do not know where to go," she admitted, her voice small and lost. "I have no family left, no money. I was trying to decide whether to just walk into the river and let it take me." The casual way she said it sent a chill down Zachary's spine. "Do not talk like that," he said, his voice firmer now. "I know things seem dark right now, but I promise you it will get better. Come with me. I will show you what kindness means, what help means. You do not have to face this alone." He stood up and extended his hand to her, palm open, waiting. Katherine looked at his hand as if it were a lifeline thrown across a great chasm. She hesitated, and Zachary could see the war going on behind her eyes. Trust did not come easy, especially not after what she had been through. But finally, slowly, she reached out and placed her small, dirty hand in his larger, calloused one. Her hand was cold despite the summer heat, and Zachary could feel her trembling as he helped her to her feet. She swayed slightly, and he steadied her with his other hand on her elbow. Up close, he could see the full extent of her injuries. There was a bruise forming on her cheekbone, scratches on her arms, and her dress was not just torn but scorched in places, as if she had been too close to flames. "Can you ride?" he asked. "I think so," Katherine said, though she did not sound certain. Zachary whistled low, and his gelding came trotting over obediently. "This is Ranger," he said. "He has a good temperament. He will not give you any trouble." He helped Katherine into the saddle, then swung up behind her. She stiffened at first when his arms came around her to take the reins, but after a moment she relaxed slightly, as if too exhausted to maintain her guard. Zachary kept Ranger to a walk as they moved away from the river, heading north toward the Double M. As they rode, Katherine began to talk. The words came slowly at first, then faster, as if she needed to get the story out before it poisoned her from the inside. She told him about the Edwards Ranch, a small operation that her father had built from nothing. She told him about the drought last year that had killed off half their cattle, about the loan they had taken from a man named Silas Crane, who claimed to be a legitimate businessman, but was really just a criminal with a fancy title. When they could not pay back the loan on time, Crane's men had come. Katherine's voice went flat and distant as she described watching her father and 18-year-old brother gunned down in their own yard when they tried to resist. The men had set fire to the house and the barn, laughing as everything burned. They had not noticed Katherine hiding in the root cellar, and by the time she emerged, they were gone and everything she loved was ash. "I waited until dark, then I just started walking," she said. "I did not know where I was going. I just walked until I could not walk anymore, and then I ended up by that river." Zachary felt rage building in his chest as he listened to her story. He had heard of Silas Crane. The man operated out of San Antonio and had his fingers in half the dirty dealings in South Texas. But hearing about his crimes was different from sitting with someone who had survived them. "I am sorry," he said, and meant it. "I am sorry that happened to you. No one should have to go through that." "Sorry does not bring them back," Katherine said bitterly. "No," Zachary agreed. "It does not. But it is all I have to offer right now, along with a safe place to stay and food to eat. The Double M is a good outfit. My boss, Marcus Montgomery, is a fair man. He will not turn you away." The sun was setting by the time they reached the Double M Ranch. The main house was a sprawling adobe structure with a red tile roof, built in the Spanish style that was common in this part of Texas. There were several outbuildings, a large barn, and corrals filled with horses. Smoke rose from the bunkhouse chimney, and Zachary could smell beans cooking. He helped Katherine down from the saddle and led her toward the main house. Before they reached the front door, it opened and a woman stepped out. She was in her mid-40s, with silver-streaked brown hair pulled back in a practical bun and sharp, intelligent eyes that took in the situation immediately. "Zachary Morrison, what have you brought home?" she asked, but her tone was not unkind. "Mrs. Montgomery, this is Katherine Edwards. She has had some trouble. I found her down by the Rio Grande. She needs help." Mrs. Montgomery, who everyone called Miss Sarah, came down the steps and took Katherine's hands in her own. "You poor dear," she said, her face softening. "Come inside. You look half dead on your feet." She led Katherine into the house, calling over her shoulder for Zachary to find her husband and explain the situation. Zachary watched them go, feeling strangely reluctant to let Katherine out of his sight. He shook off the feeling and went to find Marcus Montgomery. He found his boss in the barn, checking on a mare that was due to foal any day. Marcus was a tall, weathered man in his 50s with gray hair and the kind of face that had seen too much sun. He listened without interrupting as Zachary explained what had happened, his expression growing darker with each detail. "Sela's crane," Marcus said when Zachary finished, spitting the name like a curse. "That snake has been causing trouble for years, but no one can seem to touch him. He always has lawyers and paid-off lawmen covering for him." "What should we do?" Zachary asked. "Right now, nothing. That girl has been through enough without us dragging her into some kind of vendetta. She can stay here as long as she needs to. Sarah will find something for her to do to earn her keep, if that is what she wants. As for Crane, well, sometimes these things have a way of working themselves out." Over the following days, Katherine slowly began to recover. Miss Sarah gave her a room in the main house and found her clean clothes that fit reasonably well. The physical wounds healed quickly, but Zachary could see that the emotional ones ran much deeper. Katherine barely spoke, moving through the house like a ghost, helping with cooking and cleaning but rarely making eye contact with anyone. Zachary found himself watching her more than he should. He tried to tell himself it was just concern for her well-being, but he knew it was more than that. There was something about Katherine that drew him in, some quality that made him want to know her better, to see her smile, to hear her laugh. He wondered what she had been like before tragedy had stolen everything from her. It was Miss Sarah who suggested that Katherine might benefit from learning to ride properly and help with the horses. "She needs something to focus on besides her grief," she told Zachary one evening. "And you are good with the horses and patient with people. Why do not you teach her?" So Zachary began spending his mornings with Katherine in the corral, teaching her the basics of horsemanship. She was a quick learner, he discovered, with natural instincts and no fear. When she was working with the horses, some of the haunted look left her eyes, replaced by concentration and something that might have been the beginning of peace. One morning about 2 weeks after she had arrived at the Double M, Zachary was showing Katherine how to properly saddle a young mare when she suddenly spoke up. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. He looked up from adjusting the cinch. "Doing what?" "Being kind to me. Spending all this time teaching me things. You must have better things to do with your time." Zachary straightened up and met her eyes. "I do not have anything better to do than this," he said honestly. "And I am not being kind, I am just being decent. There is a difference." "Most people would not have stopped by that river," Katherine said. "Most people would have kept riding." "Then most people are cowards," Zachary said. "My mother taught me that you help people when they need help. It is as simple as that." Katherine was quiet for a moment, running her hand along the mare's neck. "Tell me about your mother," she said. So Zachary did. He told her about Elizabeth Morrison, who had raised 4 children on a small homestead in East Texas, who had died when Zachary was 16 and left a hole in their family that had never quite healed. He told her about his father, who had turned to drink after his wife's death and was now living with Zachary's older brother in Houston. He told her about his 2 sisters, both married and settled now, and about the restlessness that had driven him west to work on the cattle ranches. As he talked, Katherine listened with an intensity that made him feel truly seen. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "She sounds like she was a wonderful woman," Katherine said. "She was," Zachary agreed. "I think she would have liked you." The words hung in the air between them, and Zachary felt his face grow warm. He had not meant to say that, had not meant to reveal so much, but Katherine did not seem offended. Instead, a small smile touched her lips, the first real smile he had seen from her. "I think I would have liked her too," she said softly. From that day on, something shifted between them. Their morning sessions with the horses became the part of the day that Zachary looked forward to most. They talked as they worked, sharing stories and opinions, arguing good-naturedly about everything from the best way to train a colt to whether biscuits were better with honey or jam. Zachary learned that Katherine had a sharp wit and a stubborn streak a mile wide. She had opinions on everything and was not afraid to voice them, which sometimes shocked the other ranch hands who were used to women being more demure. But Zachary loved it. He loved the way her eyes lit up when she was making a point, the way she would jab her finger in the air for emphasis, the way she laughed when he teased her. He was falling in love with her. He realized one day as he watched her gentle, a skittish gelding with nothing but patience and a soft voice. The realization should have scared him, but instead it felt right, like something that had been inevitable from the moment he found her crying by that river. But he did not say anything. Katherine was still healing, still putting herself back together piece by piece. The last thing she needed was him declaring his feelings and making everything complicated. So he kept his growing love to himself and tried to be content with their friendship. Katherine, for her part, was discovering that the world had not ended with her tragedy, as much as it had felt like it at the time. The days at the Double M settled into a comfortable rhythm. She worked hard, learning not just about horses but about cattle, about mending fences, about all the 1,000 tasks that went into running a ranch. Miss Sarah taught her to shoot, insisting that every woman in Texas should know how to handle a rifle, and through it all, there was Zachary. Katherine found herself thinking about him at odd moments, noticing the way the sun brought out the gold in his brown hair, the way his hands were both strong and gentle, the way his rare smile transformed his serious face. She told herself it was just gratitude, that she was confusing appreciation for his kindness with something deeper. But she knew she was lying to herself. The truth was that Zachary Morrison had shown her that there was still good in the world, still people worth trusting. He had pulled her back from the edge of despair and given her a reason to keep going. And somewhere along the way, he had also stolen her heart. It was late August, nearly 3 months since Zachary had found Katherine by the river, when things came to a head. A stranger rode into the Double M one afternoon, a thin man with nervous eyes who asked to speak to Marcus Montgomery. Zachary happened to be nearby and watched as the man dismounted and approached the main house. "I am looking for a woman," the stranger said when Marcus came out to meet him. "Dark hair, early 20s, name of Katherine Edwards. I heard she might be staying here." Zachary felt his whole body go tense. He moved closer, his hand instinctively falling to the gun at his hip. "Who is asking?" Marcus said, his voice neutral but his stance defensive. "Name is Webb." "I work for Silas Crane. Mr. Crane has business with the Edwards family." "The Edwards family is dead," Marcus said flatly. "Or did you forget that your boss had them murdered?" Webb held up his hands. "Now, that is not how it was. There was a dispute that got out of hand. Mr. Crane feels terrible about it. He just wants to make sure that if any Edwards family member survived, they understand that there are no hard feelings. He is willing to forgive the debt, given the circumstances." "How generous," Zachary said, stepping forward. "Tell Crane that if there were any Edwards survivors, they would not want his forgiveness or anything else from him." Webb's eyes darted to Zachary, assessing him. "I will be sure to pass that along. But Mr. Crane is a persistent man. He likes to tie up loose ends." The threat in those words was unmistakable. Marcus's expression went hard as stone. "You can tell Silas Crane that if he or any of his men set foot on Double M land, they will be met with force. This is private property, and we do not take kindly to threats." Webb shrugged, already turning back to his horse. Just delivering a message. You folks have a nice day now." They watched him ride away, and Zachary felt his heart pounding. Katherine. Crane knew she was alive and he was looking for her. But why? The debt had died with her father, at least in any legal sense. Unless Crane thought there was more money to be squeezed out of the situation, or unless he just wanted to eliminate a potential witness to murder. "We need to tell her," Marcus said quietly. "She has a right to know." They found Katherine in the kitchen with Miss Sarah, kneading dough for bread. When she saw their faces, her hands stilled and the color drained from her cheeks. "What is wrong?" she asked. Marcus explained about Webb's visit as gently as he could, but there was no way to soften the blow. Katherine sank into a chair, her flour-covered hands gripping the edge of the table. "He wants to kill me," she said flatly. "Crane wants to kill me because I am the only one who knows what really happened." "We will not let that happen," Zachary said fiercely. "You are under our protection now." Katherine looked up at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I cannot ask you to put yourselves in danger for me. This is not your fight." "You are not asking," Miss Sarah said firmly. "We are offering. You are part of this family now, Katherine. We take care of our own." But Katherine shook her head. "You do not understand. Crane has dozens of men working for him. He has connections to corrupt lawmen and politicians. He can do whatever he wants and face no consequences. If I stay here, I am putting all of you at risk." "So what are you suggesting?" Zachary asked, though he already knew and dreaded the answer. "I should leave, disappear, go somewhere he cannot find me." "No," Zachary said, the word coming out sharper than he intended. "No, that is not the answer. Running will not solve this. Crane will just keep looking and you will spend the rest of your life afraid." "What else can I do?" Katherine demanded, her voice rising. "What options do I have? Go to the law. You said yourself they are in Crane's pocket. Try to fight him myself. He has an army and I have nothing." "You have us," Zachary said. He moved closer, kneeling beside her chair so he could look directly into her eyes. "Katherine, listen to me. I did not pull you out of despair just to watch you walk back into it. There has to be another way." "Like what?" she asked, but there was hope flickering in her voice now, desperate and fragile. It was Marcus who spoke up. "There is a U.S. Marshal I know, name of Cole Bridger. He is based out of Austin. He is one of the few lawmen in Texas who cannot be bought. If anyone can help us build a case against Crane, it would be him." "But that would take time," Miss Sarah pointed out. "And if Crane is actively looking for Katherine, she might not have time." "Then we make sure she is protected while we work on the legal approach," Zachary said. "We increase security around the ranch. We make sure she is never alone, and we send word to Marshal Bridger as soon as possible." Katherine looked around at the three of them, her expression torn between gratitude and guilt. "I do not deserve this," she whispered. "I do not deserve people willing to risk so much for me." "Deserve has nothing to do with it," Zachary said softly. "We care about you, Katherine. I care about you. More than I probably should." The last words slipped out before he could stop them. Miss Sarah and Marcus exchanged a knowing look and Zachary felt his face burn, but he did not take the words back. Katherine deserved to know the truth. Katherine stared at him, her eyes wide. "Zachary, you do not have to say anything," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know. I need you to understand why I am not going to let anything happen to you. Why I am going to fight for you, even if you think I should not." For a long moment, the kitchen was silent except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. Then Katherine reached out and took Zachary's hand, lacing her fingers through his. "I care about you too," she said quietly. "I have for a while now. I was just afraid to admit it, even to myself." The smile that broke across Zachary's face felt like sunshine after a storm. Marcus cleared his throat, breaking the moment. "Well, that is settled then," he said, sounding amused. "Now let us focus on keeping you both alive long enough to do something about these feelings. I will send a man to Austin tomorrow to fetch Marshal Bridger. In the meantime, we go on high alert." The next few days were tense. The ranch hands were all told about the potential threat, and everyone stayed armed and vigilant. Zachary barely left Catherine's side, and if some of the other hands teased him about it, he did not care. He had meant what he said. He was not going to let anything happen to her. Katherine handled the stress better than he expected. She did not hide in the house or act afraid. Instead, she insisted on continuing her work with the horses, on maintaining as much normalcy as possible. But Zachary noticed that she always kept a rifle within reach now, and sometimes he would catch her staring off into the distance with a troubled expression. One evening, they were sitting together on the porch of the main house, watching the sun set in a blaze of orange and pink. Katherine was leaning against Zachary, his arm around her shoulders, and the simple intimacy of it made his heart ache in the best possible way. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Katherine was quiet for a moment. "I was thinking about my father and my brother. Wondering what they would think of all this, of me being here with you. What do you think they would say? My father was a practical man. I think he would tell me to do whatever it takes to survive, to be happy if I can. My brother, he was only 18, but he always wanted me to find someone who would treat me right. I think he would have liked you." "I wish I could have met them," Zachary said honestly. "Me too," Katherine said. She turned to look up at him, her face serious. "Zachary, I need to tell you something. Even if Marshal Bridger can build a case against Crane, it could take months or even years. And there is no guarantee it will work. I need you to understand what you are signing up for by standing by me." "I understand," Zachary said. "Do you?" "Because this is not some romantic adventure. This is my life, my very survival, and it is messy and dangerous, and there are no guarantees of a happy ending." Zachary cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently stroking her cheeks. "Katherine, when I found you by that river, I told you I would show you what kindness means, what help means. But somewhere along the way, you showed me something too. You showed me what it means to be brave, to keep fighting even when everything seems hopeless. You showed me what it means to be strong, and you showed me what it feels like to fall in love, really truly fall in love, with someone who makes every day better just by being in it." He saw tears gathering in her eyes, but they were not sad tears. "Zachary Morrison, are you saying you love me?" "I am saying I love you more than I have ever loved anything or anyone in my entire life," Zachary said. "And I do not care how messy or dangerous things get. I am not going anywhere." Katherine kissed him then, and it was like coming home and starting an adventure all at the same time. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "I love you too," Katherine said. "I think I have since the day you found me, even though I did not realize it then. You saved my life, Zachary, not just by pulling me away from that river, but by giving me a reason to want to live again." They sat together as the stars came out, talking quietly about the future they hoped to build together. It was not going to be easy, they both knew that. But for the first time since that terrible day when she lost everything, Katherine felt something other than despair. She felt hope. Marshal Cole Bridger arrived at the Double M 5 days later. He was a lean man in his early 40s with steel gray eyes and a reputation for being incorruptible. Marcus and Zachary met with him in the ranch office while Katherine waited nervously in the main house. Bridger listened carefully as they explained the situation, occasionally asking questions or making notes in a small leather journal. When they finished, he sat back and considered. "Silas Crane," he said, his voice neutral. "I have been trying to build a case against him for 2 years now. The problem is that he is smart. He never does his own dirty work, and everyone who works for him is too scared to testify. If we have a witness who actually saw his men commit murder, that could be the break I need." "Katherine saw them kill her father and brother," Zachary said. "She can identify the men who did it. Would she be willing to testify in court?" Bridger asked. "That would put a target on her back," Zachary protested. "Son, that target is already there. The question is whether we can use her testimony to put Crane and his men away for good. If we can do that, she would be safe. Safer than she is now, at any rate." They brought Katherine in, and Bridger asked her to recount everything she remembered from that day. Katherine's voice shook as she described the attack, but she got through it, providing details about what the men looked like, what they said, even the names some of them had called each other. Bridger wrote it all down, his expression growing grimmer by the minute. "This is good," he said when she finished. "This is very good. I recognize some of these names. If we can bring charges against them, get one of them to turn on Crane, we might be able to make this stick." "How long will it take?" Katherine asked. "Could be weeks, could be months." "I need to gather evidence, track down witnesses, build an airtight case. And in the meantime, you need to stay hidden. If Crane finds out that you are talking to a federal marshal, he will try to eliminate you before you can testify." "She will be safe here," Marcus said firmly. "We will make sure of it." Bridger stayed at the Double M for 3 more days, interviewing Katherine in detail and making arrangements for her protection. Before he left, he pulled Zachary aside. "That woman means something to you," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, sir, she does," Zachary admitted. "Then you keep her safe while I do my job, and you be prepared for this to get worse before it gets better. Crane is a cornered rat, and cornered rats bite." Bridger's warning proved prophetic. 2 weeks after his visit, 3 men tried to sneak onto Double M property in the middle of the night. They were spotted by one of the ranch hands on watch and driven off with warning shots, but it was a clear message. Crane knew where Katherine was, and he was not going to give up easily. The near miss left everyone on edge. Marcus doubled the guards and instituted a system where someone was always watching the approaches to the ranch. Katherine was not allowed to leave the immediate area of the main house and barns without an armed escort. It was stifling, but necessary. Through it all, Katherine and Zachary's relationship deepened. They were together constantly, and the danger they faced seemed to strip away any pretense or game playing. They talked about everything, their hopes and fears, their pasts and the future they wanted to build together. Zachary had never felt closer to another human being in his life. One night in late September, they were sitting in the parlor of the main house after dinner. Miss Sarah had retired early, and Marcus was in his office going over accounts, leaving them with a rare moment of privacy. Katherine was curled up against Zachary on the sofa, his arm around her, and they were talking quietly about nothing in particular when she suddenly went still. "Zachary, can I ask you something?" "Anything," he said. "When this is all over, assuming we both survive it, what do you want?" "For us, I mean." Zachary was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to put his feelings into words. "I want to marry you," he said finally. "I want to build a life with you, have a home with you. Maybe start our own small ranch someday, nothing fancy, just a place that is ours. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. I want children with you if you want them. I want to grow old with you. I want everything, Katherine." She turned to look up at him, her eyes shining. "That is what I want too, all of it." "Then that is what we will have," Zachary said, kissing her forehead. "I promise you that. Once this business with Crane is settled, we will have the life we want." "That is a big promise to make," Katherine said softly, "given that we do not know how this will end." "I know how it will end," Zachary said with more confidence than he felt. It will end with you safe and free and us together. I will not accept any other outcome." Katherine smiled and kissed him, and for a while they forgot about Silas Crane and Marshall's and danger, lost in each other. October brought cooler weather and news from Marshall Bridger. He had managed to track down 2 of the men who had attacked the Edwards ranch and arrest them. One of them, faced with the prospect of hanging for murder, had agreed to testify against Crane in exchange for a lighter sentence. Bridger was putting together an arrest warrant. The news should have been cause for celebration, but Katherine was afraid to hope too much. She had learned the hard way that things could go wrong in an instant, and she was right to be cautious, because Crane was not going down without a fight. 3 days after Bridger's message arrived, a much larger group of men attacked the Double M. There were at least a dozen of them, and they came at dawn when the light was still dim and uncertain. They rode in shooting, clearly intending to kill anyone who got in their way. The ranch erupted into chaos. The hands grabbed their rifles and returned fire, taking cover behind water troughs and fence posts. Marcus was hit in the shoulder early in the fight, but kept shooting with his left hand. Zachary got Katherine into the root cellar, the safest place on the property, then ran back out to join the defense. The fight lasted maybe 20 minutes, though it felt like hours. When it was over, 2 of the attackers were dead and 3 more were wounded and captured. The rest fled. On the Double M side, Marcus's shoulder wound was the most serious injury, though several hands had minor wounds from flying splinters and ricochets. As soon as it was safe, Zachary went to get Katherine. She was sitting in the darkness of the cellar, a rifle across her lap, her face pale but composed. When she saw him, she set the rifle aside and threw herself into his arms. "Is it over?" she asked. "For now," Zachary said. "Are you all right?" "I am fine, just scared. What about everyone else?" "Marcus was hit, but it is not too bad. Miss Sarah is patching him up now. We captured some of Crane's men. Maybe they will talk." They did talk, especially when faced with murder charges. By the end of the day, Marshall Bridger had more than enough evidence to arrest Silas Crane. He rode out from Austin with a squad of federal marshals and did exactly that, taking Crane into custody without incident. The man had been so confident in his power and connections that he had not even tried to run. The trial was held in Austin in December of 1878. Katherine testified, her voice clear and strong as she described what she had witnessed. Other witnesses came forward, people who had been too afraid to speak out before but now found their courage. The evidence was overwhelming. Silas Crane was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, among other charges. He was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Several of his men were convicted of murder and sentenced to hang. It was not perfect justice. Nothing could bring back Katherine's father and brother, but it was something. It was accountability. When the verdict came down, Katherine broke down crying in the courthouse hallway, and Zachary held her while she sobbed out all the grief and fear and tension of the past months. Miss Sarah and Marcus stood nearby, giving them space but offering silent support. "It is over," Katherine kept saying through her tears. "It is really over." "It is over," Zachary confirmed. "You are safe now. We can have the life we talked about." They were married in Johnson City on a bright day in January of 1879. It was a small ceremony. Just family and close friends from the Double M. Katherine wore a simple white dress that Miss Sarah had helped her sew, and Zachary wore his best suit with his boots polished to a high shine. Marcus walked Katherine down the aisle since her own father could not, and there was not a dry eye in the small church. After the wedding, Marcus and Miss Sarah gave them a wedding gift. It was a deed to 300 acres on the eastern edge of the Double M land, along with enough money to buy some cattle and horses to start their own operation. "Consider it payment for all the work you have both done," Marcus said gruffly when they tried to protest. "And for being brave enough to stand up to Crane. You two deserve a good start in life." Zachary and Katherine spent their first months of marriage living in a small cabin on their new property while they worked to build a proper house. It was hard work, but they did it together, side by side. Zachary had never been happier in his life. He would wake up every morning next to his wife and marvel at his good fortune. Katherine bloomed in their new life. The haunted look that had been in her eyes for so long finally faded, replaced by joy and confidence. She worked as hard as any man, helping Zachary build fences and break horses. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch of their little cabin and watch the sunset, talking about their plans for the future. Their first child was born in November of 1880, a healthy boy they named Jacob Thomas Morrison. Zachary had never known love could expand the way it did when he held his son for the first time. Katherine was radiant as a mother, and watching her with their baby made Zachary fall in love with her all over again. They added onto their house as their family grew. A daughter came next, Emma Rose, born in the spring of 1882. Then another son, Michael James, in 1884. Each child was a blessing, and their small ranch prospered as the years went by. Katherine never forgot her father and brother. She kept their memory alive by telling stories about them to their children, making sure the next generation knew about the grandfather and uncle they had never met. She also made sure to instill in her children the importance of standing up for what was right, even when it was dangerous. Zachary proved to be everything Katherine had hoped for in a husband and more. He was a devoted father, a hard worker, and a loving partner. They had their disagreements, of course. What married couple did not? But they always talked through their problems. The foundation of trust and respect they had built from the very beginning never wavered. In 1885, they finally finished building the large house they had planned, a beautiful structure with a wraparound porch and large windows that let in the Texas sunshine. They named their ranch the Edwards Morrison Ranch, honoring both their families. Above the front door, Zachary carved a sign that read, "Built on love and hard work." Miss Sarah and Marcus remained close friends throughout the years. Marcus eventually retired and passed the double M on to his nephew, but he and Sarah frequently visited the Edwards Morrison Ranch. Miss Sarah loved spoiling the Morrison children, and Marcus enjoyed teaching young Jacob the finer points of cattle ranching. By 1890, the Edwards Morrison Ranch had grown into a thriving operation with over 1,000 head of cattle and some of the finest horses in South Texas. Zachary and Katherine had earned a reputation for being fair employers who treated their hands well, and they never had trouble finding good people to work for them. On a warm June evening in 1891, Zachary and Katherine sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard. Jacob was 10 now, Emma was 9, and Michael was 7. Katherine was pregnant again, expecting their 4th child in the fall. "You ever think about that day by the river?" Katherine asked suddenly. "The day you found me," Zachary smiled and took her hand. "I think about it all the time." "It was the luckiest day of my life." "Luckiest," Katherine repeated. "I was at my lowest point, ready to give up on everything. And I was just a cowboy tracking a lost horse with no idea that my whole life was about to change," Zachary said. "But it did change in the best possible way." "You changed it, Katherine. You made me better than I was." Katherine leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. "You saved my life that day, not just physically, but in every way that matters. You showed me that it was possible to be happy again, to trust again, to love again." "I think we saved each other," Zachary said. I was just going through the motions before I met you, working hard but not really living. You gave me a purpose, a reason to build something that would last." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set in shades of gold and crimson. Their children's laughter filled the air, and in the distance, they could hear the lowing of cattle and the whinny of horses. It was a good life, built on a foundation of love and trust that had been forged in fire. Their fourth child, a daughter they named Sarah after Miss Sarah, was born in October of 1891. She was a tiny, fierce little thing with dark hair like her mother and her father's serious gray eyes. The older children doted on their baby sister, and the house was filled with noise and laughter and love. As the years passed, Zachary and Katherine watched their children grow up on the land they had built together. Jacob showed a natural talent for working with horses and eventually took over that aspect of the ranch. Emma was clever with numbers and became invaluable in managing the business side of things. Michael had a gift for reading the land and weather, knowing when to move the herds and when to stay put. And little Sarah, as she grew, proved to have her mother's stubborn determination and her father's kind heart. In 1898, when Zachary was 44 and Katherine was 41, they became grandparents for the first time. Jacob, now 18 and recently married to a sweet girl from Johnson City, had a son. Holding his grandson, Zachary felt the circle of life complete itself in a profound way. This baby would grow up hearing stories about his great-grandfather Edwards and great-uncle who had died defending their land. But he would also grow up secure and loved, with opportunities they had never had. Katherine watched her husband with their grandson and felt her heart swell. The scared, broken girl who had sat by that river in 1878 felt like a different person, someone from another lifetime. She had been given a second chance at life, at love, at family, and she had seized it with both hands. She had built something beautiful out of ashes. That night, after everyone had gone home and the children were in bed, Katherine and Zachary lay together in the darkness of their bedroom. They had shared this room for nearly 20 years now, and it was as familiar and comfortable as an old pair of boots. "We did well, did we not?" Katherine said softly. "We did better than well," Zachary replied. "We built something that will last, something our children and grandchildren will benefit from." "I was not talking about the ranch," Katherine said. "I was talking about us, our family. We took something terrible and turned it into something beautiful." Zachary pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "We did that together. I could not have done any of it without you." "Do you remember what you said to me that day by the river?" Katherine asked. "You said, 'Come with me.' Just those simple words. I almost said no. I almost told you to leave me there." "I am glad you did not," Zachary said. "So am I. Every single day I am grateful that I took your hand, that I trusted you when I had no reason to trust anyone." "I would find you 1,000 times over," Zachary said. "In any life, in any time, I would always find you and I would always ask you to come with me." They fell asleep that way, wrapped in each other's arms, surrounded by the life they had built and the love they had nurtured through years of joy and hardship. The Edwards Morrison Ranch continued to prosper through the turn of the century. As Texas moved into the new modern age, Zachary and Katherine adapted, adopting new ranching techniques while maintaining the values that had always guided them. They treated their land with respect, their animals with care, and their employees with fairness. It earned them a reputation throughout South Texas. In 1905, when both Zachary and Katherine were in their early 50s, they decided it was time to step back and let the next generation take over the day-to-day operations of the ranch. Jacob was ready to be the primary manager, with his siblings all playing important roles. Zachary and Katherine remained involved, of course, offering advice and wisdom when asked. But they were no longer working dawn to dusk. It gave them time to simply enjoy each other. They took long rides across their land, just the two of them, remembering all the work they had put in to make it thrive. They spent evenings on their porch, watching grandchildren play in the same yard where their children had played. They traveled to Houston to visit Zachary's siblings, and they made the trip to San Antonio every year to visit the graves of Katherine's father and brother. Standing at those graves one spring afternoon in 1908, Katherine's hand in his, Zachary reflected on the winding path that had brought them to this moment. If he had not been tracking that lost mare on that particular afternoon 30 years ago, if he had not heard Katherine crying, if he had chosen to keep riding instead of stopping, his entire life would have been different. All the joy, all the love, all the family they had built together would never have existed. "What are you thinking about?" Katherine asked, seeing the faraway look in his eyes. "Fate," Zachary said. "Providence. Whatever you want to call it." "I was just thinking about how one small decision can change everything." "The decision to stop by that river," Katherine said. "It was not a question." "The decision to stop, and your decision to take my hand," Zachary confirmed. "Two small choices that led to everything we have now." Katherine squeezed his hand. "They were not small choices. They were the biggest choices we ever made. Everything else just followed naturally from them." In 1910, they celebrated their 31st wedding anniversary with a large party at the ranch. All their children were there, now grown adults with families of their own. Miss Sarah, now 82 and frail but still sharp as a tack, attended with her nephew and his family. Friends and neighbors came from all over the county to help them celebrate. As Zachary stood before the crowd assembled in their barn, decorated with lanterns and wildflowers, he raised his glass in a toast. 31 years ago, I married the bravest, strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever known," he said. "She took my hand when she had every reason to trust no one. She built a life with me when she had lost everything. She gave me children and grandchildren and more love than any one man deserves. Katherine, everything good in my life started the day I found you by that river. Here is to 31 more years and then 31 after that." The crowd cheered and drank, and Katherine stood up to kiss her husband, not caring that everyone was watching. Let them see, she thought. Let them see what real love looks like. As the party went on into the night, Katherine pulled Zachary aside for a quiet moment alone. They stood outside the barn, looking up at the stars that seemed impossibly bright in the Texas sky. "You remember what you said to me that day?" Katherine asked. "Beyond just asking me to come with you," Zachary thought back, trying to remember his exact words from so long ago. "I told you I would show you what kindness means, what help means." "You did show me that," Katherine said, "but you showed me so much more. You showed me what courage looks like, what patience feels like, what it means to be truly seen and truly loved, not for what you can provide or what you look like, but for who you are at your core. You showed me what it means to be a partner, sharing both the burdens and the joys. You showed me what it means to build something lasting, something worth fighting for." She turned to face him, taking both his hands in hers. "But most importantly, Zachary Morrison, you showed me what love means. Real, deep, unshakable love that survives loss and danger and hardship. The kind of love that builds homes and families and legacies. The kind of love that makes life worth living." Zachary felt tears prick his eyes. After all these years, Katherine could still move him with her words, still make him feel like the luckiest man alive. "I love you," he said simply. "I will always love you." "I know," Katherine said, smiling. "That is what you showed me." They stood together under the stars, listening to the sounds of celebration from the barn, surrounded by the life and love they had created together. And in that moment, both of them understood that the promise Zachary had made all those years ago by the river had been kept in full. He had shown her what love means, not through words but through actions, day after day, year after year, building a life together that was rich with meaning and joy. The years continued to pass, bringing with them the usual mixture of happiness and sorrow. They lost Miss Sarah in 1912, and the funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives she had touched. Marcus had passed a few years earlier, and now both of the people who had given Zachary and Katherine their first chance at a new life were gone. But their legacy lived on in the thriving ranch and the family they had helped nurture. Zachary's health began to fail in 1915. Nothing dramatic, just the slow accumulation of years of hard work and age. He moved slower, needed more rest, spent more time sitting on the porch than working in the fields. But his mind stayed sharp, and his love for Katherine never dimmed. Katherine cared for him with the same devotion he had shown her all those years ago. She was by his side constantly, making sure he was comfortable, reading to him, reminiscing about their life together. Their children would visit regularly, bringing grandchildren, and now even a few great-grandchildren. The house was always full of life and laughter. One evening in late spring of 1917, Zachary and Katherine sat on their porch watching the sunset. He was 63 now, she was 60. They had been married for 38 years, together for 39. Zachary's breathing was labored, and they both knew he did not have much time left. "I wish I had more years to give you," Zachary said quietly. "You have given me more than enough," Katherine replied, holding his hand. "You gave me everything, Zachary. A life I never dreamed I could have after that terrible day. Children and grandchildren who are good people because they learned from your example. A home filled with love. 38 years of waking up next to my best friend. No regrets?" Zachary asked. "Not a single one," Katherine said firmly. "Every moment with you has been a gift. Even the hard times, we faced them together, and that made them bearable." "I am afraid," Zachary admitted. "Not of dying, but of leaving you." Katherine's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "Do not be afraid. You are not leaving me. You will always be with me in every sunset I watch, every grandchild I hold, every acre of this land we built together. You will be in my heart until the day I join you." Zachary squeezed her hand weakly. "I love you, Katherine Edwards Morrison. Loving you has been the greatest honor of my life." "I love you too," Katherine whispered. "Thank you for stopping that day. Thank you for asking me to come with you. Thank you for showing me what love means." Zachary passed peacefully in his sleep that night, Katherine holding his hand. The funeral was held at the ranch, and it seemed like half of South Texas attended. People came from as far as Houston and San Antonio to pay their respects to a man who had been known for his integrity, his kindness, and his devotion to his family. Katherine grieved deeply, but she did not break. She had learned long ago that she was stronger than she thought. She continued to live on the ranch, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She worked in the garden Zachary had built for her, rode the horses they had raised together, and sat on the porch every evening watching the sunset, always imagining him sitting beside her. She lived for another 12 years, watching the ranch continue to grow and prosper, meeting great-great-grandchildren, telling stories about the grandfather they never met, and the love story that had built their family legacy. She was respected throughout the county as a matriarch and a woman of wisdom. Katherine passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1929, at the age of 72. Her children found her in her bed, a small smile on her face, her hand positioned as if she was reaching out to hold someone else's hand. They buried her next to Zachary on a hill overlooking their ranch, under a large oak tree they had planted together in the early days of their marriage. The Edwards Morrison Ranch continues to this day, now run by the fifth and sixth generations of the family. The main house still stands, carefully maintained, with the sign Zachary carved still above the door reading, "Built on love and hard work." In the family room hangs a large photograph of Zachary and Katherine from their 30th anniversary, both of them smiling at the camera with their arms around each other. The story of how they met has been passed down through the generations. A family legend about a cowboy who found a woman crying by a river and changed both their lives forever. The current generation of Morrison children grows up hearing about their great-great-great-grandfather who stopped when he could have kept riding, who extended his hand when he could have turned away, who showed a broken woman what love really means. And sometimes, on warm summer evenings, when the family gathers on the porch of the big house to watch the sunset, they swear they can feel the presence of Zachary and Katherine, still together, still watching over the land and the family they built from nothing but love, courage, and an unshakable faith in each other. The legacy they left behind was not just a successful ranch or a large family, though those were certainly part of it. Their real legacy was the example they set about what love could be when it was nurtured with patience, respect, and commitment. They showed generations that followed that real love was not just a feeling but a choice made every day, through good times and bad, through tragedy and triumph. Every newlywed couple in the Morrison family receives the same advice on their wedding day, words that have been passed down since Katherine first spoke them at Jacob's wedding. Love is not just about the good days. It is about standing together when everything falls apart. It is about extending your hand when someone needs help. It is about building something together that will last long after you are gone. And somewhere beyond the sunset, beyond the river where their story began, Zachary and Katherine Morrison rest together, their love story complete, their promise kept, their legacy secure. They had taken a moment of deepest despair and transformed it into a lifetime of love and joy. They had shown each other, and everyone who knew them, what it truly means to love and be loved. That is the story of how a cowboy found a woman crying by a river and showed her what love means, and how she in turn showed him the same, building together a love that transcended time and circumstance to become something eternal. Their story became the foundation on which generations built their own lives, a reminder that one act of compassion, one moment of choosing to help rather than turn away, can change everything. And in the end, that is what love really means. Choosing each other every day, no matter what comes, building something together that is greater than either person could create alone, and leaving behind something beautiful for those who come after.